We'll go ahead and grab a seat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, would you give a warm ACC welcome to our middle school director, Mr. Paul English.
Good morning, church family, and greetings to those of you watching online with us. Thanks for the warm welcome. As Bill said, it has been a while. I've been working in middle school, which is awesome. I really love it. But it's also cool to get brought up from the minor leagues and get to spend some time with you guys here today. For those of you who weren't around, we had a little bet going for winter camp signups. I actually had several people already ask me this morning how that was going. The bet was that if 30 students signed up, they could dye my beard whatever color they want. So, yeah, we kind of envisioned like a Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat sort of thing. But unfortunately, camp sold out. They don't have any extra spots. But we did fill up R18, and we actually have a wait list. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more kids in there too. That's something you guys could pray about. But I think I'm going to have to end up dyeing it something anyways. So we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted on that. I know most of you have been asking me about it anyways. But I'm not here to talk to you about that. I'm here to talk to you about a light in the darkness. Would you guys agree that the world seems a bit dark today? Yeah. Here's just a few stats for you. More than 1/3 of Americans have displayed clinical signs of anxiety, depression, or both since the coronavirus pandemic began. The economy is now a significant source of stress for 70% of Americans. And only 18% of U.S. respondents said their country is more united since the onset of COVID, while a staggering 77% said that they are more divided, which is by far the highest such percentage of any country surveyed. But let's be honest, we don't really need the stats, do we? We have all felt the pain, the anxiety, the suffering, and the stress that's just in the air. We've all felt tempted to give in to that despair. But there is hope. There is a light in the darkness. One of my favorite sections of the Bible is the poetic interlude to the book of John. And it tells us about this light. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Jesus went on to say this about himself. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So what does it mean to walk in darkness? Well, I had an experience with this recently. I had made some copies over in the office, and I went back to the MSM room. And as I got into the room, I noticed it was pitch black because the sun had already gone down. And it was about 20 feet behind me to get to the light switch. So being lazy, I decided I would just navigate the room in the dark, which would have been okay, except someone had placed a beanbag in the middle of the room where it's normally not supposed to be. And of course I hit it full stride, went tumbling. I was kind of proud of myself though. I tuck and rolled, managed to save all the copies. They didn't go flying. And it actually would have looked pretty cool, I think, if someone had seen it. But just like I was in that dark room, without the light of God, we are lost. We're living a life without meaning and purpose. Now, sometimes we are walking in the darkness because we choose the darkness. John 3:19 through 20 says, light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. You know, there's a new Matrix movie out. Anybody seen that? No? Absolutely nobody. Okay. I actually don't go to the movies much anymore, but I really like the Matrix series, and so I think I'm going to go see this one. I think the original Matrix actually did a pretty good job of talking about reality as it is from a Christian point of worldview, but at the same time not from a Christian worldview. If you think about the metaphor of these people being plugged into these pods, just providing electricity for the machines, and the whole time they think their lives are awesome, right? But they're living in this virtual reality. And that's how it can be for people in the world. They're living in darkness and they don't really even know it. And then there's also people like this guy who have been freed from the matrix, but the harshness of life gets him down. And so he wants to return to the darkness. There's just a lot of metaphors there. So how do we escape the matrix and live in reality? Well, first of all, we have to see the light of God and allow it to shine upon our heart. His presence will light our path, fill us with light, and transform our hearts. Now, many of you have made this decision to follow God, and he has transformed your heart with his light. But there's more. Jesus calls us not only to walk in the light, but also to be a light to others. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So how do we let our light shine so that it may lead other people out of the darkness? Well, nothing else sends a beacon of light quite like love. Would you guys agree that we could use a little more love in the world right now? Yeah, amen. Jesus said, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." When I was growing up in church, one of my favorite songs was based on this verse, and it said, "They will know we are Christians by our love." But sadly, that hasn't always been the case, has it? Now, we started off well. The early church was a beautiful example of light shining brightly in the darkness. Despite being persecuted, arrested, thrown to lions, used as human torches in the streets of Rome, the early church established communities of radical love. But what really set them apart was that they not only loved each other, but they even loved their enemies and those who persecuted them. And this love went on to transform an empire. Because that's what love does. It transforms. It starts with the individual heart, then relationships, then communities, cities, nations, and eventually the world. Yet so often we believe that we are the agent of change, that my intellect, my arguments, and other propaganda are what's going to get other people to change. Like the early church, we also live in a dark time, a contentious time where people are fearful, stressed out, angry, and full of hate. A time where people want to be right and want to change others to be just like them. We see this a lot during the holidays, right? We're surrounded by people who aren't like us. And our natural inclination is to want to change them to be like us. And likewise, they're trying to change us to be like them. 'Tis the season for getting into fierce arguments with people we love about religion and politics. But I gave up on trying to change people long ago. Not because I didn't care, but because I found a better way. I discovered that a clever meme doesn't change the heart. Love changes the heart. I have decided that rather than wanting to be right, I want to be a light. I have discovered that winning the argument isn't what wins the soul. Rather than trying to change people, let's love people as they are and lead them to God and let Him do the changing. Now, some of you might be asking, why use this method? Well, I have a good answer for you, because it's the method that God used with us. 1 John 4, 7 through 12 reads, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for us. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us." Now, in my experience, it was not my intellectual thoughts on what to do and what's right and truth that changed me. It was also not my attempts to work hard to become a better person. But this transformation came about only once I surrendered to God in trust and obedience. By his grace, he transformed me by the power of his Spirit in a way I could never have imagined possible. And let me tell you, there's a lot of grace there. Because yeah, I did work in a church, I went to Bible college, but that time in between was pretty rough. And I remember saying a few years ago to a friend who's here in the audience that it would take a burning bush to get me back into ministry. Yet here I am. Yeah. I was an enemy of God, but he reached out to me and he brought me back around. He gave me a chance. And he did that for all of us. Romans 5:10 tells us, while we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his Son. We need to remember that God loved us while we were enemies rebelling against him. And we must trust that his love and grace are sufficient for others as well. 1 Corinthians 5:17 through 18 says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone, the new is here. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." So here's what we can take away from this verse. God is the one who has transformed us into a new creation through the saving power of Jesus Christ and his death on the cross. God shone his transformative light upon our heart. While we were still his enemies, rebelling against him, God reconciled us from sin and made us his children and heirs. God drew us out of the darkness. God gave us the ministry of reconciliation so that we can help others by shining a light of love which will guide them to the one true God who can save and transform them. All we do is shine our light upon the path that leads to God. He's the one who does the work. Now, in preparation for the sermon, I asked Pastor Brandon if he had any advice. He said, finish early. Everybody likes it when you finish early. He's a wise man, so I'm going to take his advice on this, and I'm going to wrap it up. But before I do, I'd like to share a poem I recently wrote on this topic. Would you guys like to hear it? Yes. All right. A simple command, clear and concise, changing the heart, relationships, the world. One candle, a tiny flame, barely enough to illuminate a room. Touching one life, then another, and then, each going forth, lighting the hearts of men, until we refocus and see from afar that one tiny flame, now a raging fire. Thank you. I hope this message has helped to shine a light of God onto your heart. And if it has, if you have any questions, please come up to me afterwards. I would love to talk with you. And those of you watching online, feel free to email me at penglish@azcc.org. And there is an insert in the bulletin. I pray that you'll take some time today to reflect on what God has said to you and to see how you can live that out in your life. And I'll close with this. We are not afraid of this present darkness because we have seen the light. We have been filled with the light, and we are ready to be a light in the darkness.